Okay, so we've seen why we don't do this. Again, it's simply because you don't know what the square root of 2 is, not really. And to approximate the square root of 2, you pretty much have to use your calculator, although, you know, there are things you could do. Still, we don't use it. So the way we get the graph of the square root of x is we invert the table for x squared. Table for x squared, well, we know that. Excuse me, apparently, and clearly gives us this graph. We invert the function by switching the rows, or switching the columns, sorry. Just as we did, or in a way very similar to what we did when we inverted the 2 to the x function. We switched the coordinates, the x and the y coordinates, and we plotted the new points, and we got the graph that I said was the graph of the inverse function, which was the log function. Inverting the 2 to the x function gave us the log to the base 2 function. Well, here we're inverting the x squared function, and we're going to get the square root of x function. Now, the table originally contained everything you see here. I've got some light cross out here, and I've kind of X'd out part of this graph down here, or waved it out with orange wavy line. We'll see why I did that in a minute. But if we just plot all these 5 points, we get a point here, 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 and a point here. And you can do that yourself, and if you haven't done it, you should. If you aren't sure that it would look like this, you ought to. Don't take my word for it. You have to do these things yourself. Okay, so here's a graph, but that's not a graph of a function. It's not single valued. If this is x, then what's y? Well, it could be here, it could be here. You can't have a iffy answer to the question of what's the value of a function. You can't say, well, it's either this or this. Well, for a relation, that's fine, but for a function, no. And up here, we see that 4 is associated. If x is 4, that gives you y value 2. But if x equals 4, that gives you y value negative 2. You don't have an unambiguous answer to what is the value of the function when x equals 4. Okay, so what we do is we cross out what I call the lower branch of this function. Okay, I just cross this out, and now I've got the graph of something that probably that is a decent representation of a function, at least over the range or the domain that we have here. And of course, that means I crossed out all the points with negative y values. So on the table, I cross out the points with negative y values, and magically, of course, that removes all ambiguity. For any value of x now, I've only got one value of y, and I have a function, and that is the square root of x function. So this is how we construct the graph of the square root of x function.